I mean, guys, I'm breaking mental barriers every single night. Roughly around 10:30, when all the normies go to sleep, I decide to stay up for another 30 minutes. I say, you know what, GRC, live a little. Stay up for 30 minutes while I talk about Pokegon. Next thing you know, my ETH address is getting absolutely warped through. I'm sending ETH. I'm minting Pokegon. I'm thinking about 60 hours plus of Web3 education. And that's really what, dude, people, I'm such an idiot. Like, this is like the last reason people probably buy Pokegon. It's the only reason. I want that 60 hours. Because Sam, another thing I'm going to tell you real quick, and again, people don't even know what I'm talking about right now, but we're going to get all into it. There's 6 badges and they show up in your OpenSea. If a developer sees that you went through that, he at least knows, because it's not easy to get that 6 badge. Not many people get, because you have to do the Web3 education. It's hard. It gets hard at the end. So if you were a dev, and let's imagine like in the future, like this is a very complicated course, right? But they get the badges. Just think of the idea more than the Pokemon part. You know exactly where they're at. No more school. Oh, wait, school's gone. Oh, wait, we just fixed the whole school system, because you can earn badges instead of shit, because that's more valuable. At least you know. At least I have a digital clock that this man actually did something. At school, I wrote everything on my leg. And now I would have a smartphone. So let me guess, 99% of all people in school are cheating. Oh yeah, everyone knows that. Guys, this is going to be crazy. We're opening walls. We're breaking down barriers. We're in a bear market. I have limit orders at 1.5 pennies for Hex. 1.5 pennies. You know, I'm just going to be 100. And I'm not saying that I know the future, but I've seen despair in the streets, and I don't see it right now. I don't see people suffering. I see people buying homes that are overpriced, used cars that are a little too expensive. Does that seem like the bottom? We'll have to wait till Thursday. We're bumping on that 3-1 mark. Again, guys, I'm really excited about crypto right now. It's ridiculous. Like, me and Sam cannot. Thank God we are on this path. Thank God above. I don't know what the rules are or whatever, but I'm happy that I'm here. Guys, every day, bear market, all my money's going to zero, and I'm just grateful, baby. Like, I'm just grateful, baby. I love it. It's so much fun. Come on, guys. It's new tech. It's a revolution. Everything's changing right now, and we get to watch it, be a part of it. What? So much better than like crying about your freaking problems. Guys, 1 minute, 9 seconds. DeFi proof. We got Hex Orca in the background. Crypto curricula. We're talking about Web3 education, Pokemon, Not Nintendo, Omakase. Guys, you know what I'm talking about.
You already know what time it is. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. 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 Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some Hex and I'm making a stay. Got me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some Maxi and that's just in case. Jim ready sent me to show you the way. Crypto in the morning. 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 Crypto in the morning.
Whoops. What up? What up?
Yo, so it is great to see you, bro. It never gets old hearing your name in a song. It never gets old.
That's true.
I noticed something yesterday on Twitter. So if you guys are not using Twitter, you should take the link that I shared in the comments and just go over and retweet that after you press the subscribe button. But over on Twitter, if you go through and you search for the hashtag hex or $hex or $cult, I found something very interesting. So when you do that, it says top, then it says latest people, photos, and video. So if you go to latest, this is a chronological order of people talking about hex or talking about cult. And you can put parentheses, right? You can put the parentheses around hashtag or this or hashtag that. And then that way, wherever it's talked about in a tweet, it will come up in chronological order. And do you know which community is actually more active on Twitter? Yeah. Cult is more active on Twitter than Hex is as of yesterday. And I was
looking. Can I tell you a secret?
Yes.
I guess nobody's heard this yet. So you guys know how I sponsor with Shield Masters here?
Yes, sir. You guys link down below.
So I've been working on a marketing campaign kind of situation, trying to learn, trying to change, trying to grow, trying to help them, help me, you know the deal. So I said, you know what? Let me see what's the most popping right now. Guys, I'm not going to beat around the bush. As far as click rate,
straight up,
Colt DAO, and I saw this because I finished all this yesterday. I'm sending B Roots, and he'll be coming on this show when he gets back from vacation. B Roots, the meme king, the self-proclaimed meme king. He is getting a Shield Masters one of a kind, one of one Colt DAO War Shield, and I said, maybe I should send one to that UFC fighter as well who walked out with the Colt DAO mask on. And then he said, I would love to take pictures with it because it's $600. So it's like, I'm going to send this shit to him. And this is just for, you know, I'm not no expectations of anything, of course. But I want to see if the market's even plastic for luxury goods right now because I don't think it is, to be frank. But I don't know how many rich people there are. I could need education too. Guys, that's going on. B Roots is getting a Colt Shield. I don't own any Colt, but I think the cool mask and all the people and the click rate, you know the deal.
And it's interesting using Twitter to kind of like gauge the energy or the pulse of like what is happening. You can use that through the hashtags or specific words and or phrases on there and understand what is popping, what is like happening. Like yesterday we had
how you research these days, literally.
Yeah. Yesterday we had like something that came up multiple times, at least not on Twitter, but in our feed here. And that was relating to Pokemon or Pokegan or something like that. And that
Democracy could be watching, so you don't slur your words. Stand up straight.
What is it called?
He's a friend. He's a guy in the sphere that I follow him, and my notifications are on, and he's just really insightful within this space, and he's just a perspective. It's on a different level because he's very non-biased and like a little bit altruistic.
And I'm sure he's gonna say this, but that's who Orca goes to for the alpha.
Well, yeah, that's why I followed him because Orca told me to. Guys, let's bring Orca in. This is what I'm gonna go through today. Let's figure out what the fuck is going on, Sam, because I've minted these and I'm pumped up, and I'll wear t-shirts. I'll sell my soul to the devil, baby. But let's get into the details. The 60 plus hours of Web3 education. I'm really, really actually interested in that because I want to know if we can floor the whole entire education system with funny badges. Wouldn't that be fun? Guys, that's the future, and it is, and it sounds weird, but it's just going to be looked a little different. Guys, Orca coming in hot.
Yo, what's up?
Yo, always great
to see you. Even really comment on it.
Yo, always good to see you.
Wait, is that official merch?
Oh man, I wish.
Oh, I thought it was
just a Pikachu hat.
That's awesome.
Just letting them know the writing's on the wall, man. Like all your Pokemon are belong to us. Is the vibes.
First of all, I want you to know that I am I guess proud's not the right word, but I'm happy that you are bringing people to a positive place. And it's not like nobody knows the future, guys. Orca's not a machine, but we're all learning Web3 space from really smart guys. We're excited. We're just excited. Can we be excited or must we be depressed? Is the rule all hexagons must be depressed in the bear? No, not me. I want to learn as much as possible. When Orca started saying Pokemon, stuff like that, I was like, cool. Then he said 60 plus hours of education. And he said real education. And I was like, excuse me? That's exactly what GRC needs. So I was just like, okay, so
that's the kind of stuff that also interests me too, because like the game portion of things, if I don't see, I mean, escapism or like idle likeness is anxiety to me in a lot of ways. So I don't tremendously find value in that. I know other people do find value in it, and I'm not trying to take away from other people finding value in that kind of stuff, but something where you can go through and the paradigm shifts from here's fucking 60 slides. You just read through this shit. There's some links in there for additional resources. And that's the course to learn something versus a much more thoughtful way of approaching something where you're actually doing things, which is, I assume, the structure or at least the ideal for the direction of this is far more interesting to me. So this is going to be dope. Can you tell us about this or like how you got involved?
Well, can we start from the bottom layer a little bit for me too?
Sure.
Like, how did you, because guys, if you don't know Orca, if you don't know Orca at this point, you are literally blind. First of all, he's popping in big beard. He's popping in with alpha. He's all over Hex, best DeFi in crypto. He's all over the best Web3 shit in crypto. He goes all-nighters. He doesn't sleep. Supposedly, he doesn't need sleep.
I didn't sleep yet, so
This is Orca. He's an
he doesn't eat very often. Sometimes
I've been eating like a degenerate lately, so like that has changed a little bit.
Well, maybe that's why you're grinning ear to ear in the morning. For a while, you weren't grinning as hard. You were just like, I'm not eating at the moment.
Right. I was in my super focus mode.
How did you get involved with just for me too, like selfish reasons? How did you start to figure out about this Omakase guys? Because I'm not going to lie, I've dug into his Twitter for about an hour and I couldn't stop.
Yeah, it's pretty intoxicating. So I've actually been like cyber stalking this dude for like a decade. Like OG Bitcoin Talk forum, and like he didn't always go by Omakase or Master Chef Masatoshi. So like there have been different handles. But like he's just a really smart person who has a very interesting like life story. But the more important stuff that's like relevant to people today is that he has started a web. So he started a Web3 business that is tailored to empowering creatives. And so if you go to omakase.com, OMAKASEA.com, you'll see that it's a smart contract deployer. Yeah, feel free to pull it up.
Can you say it one more time for me and spell it, please?
I will spell it in our private chat.
Yeah, I can pull it up because I have all these guys. Oh, yeah.
Well, we can pull
it's .com. You got it.
Mm-hmm. So it's a platform that him and his team have created. So like he's a developer, he's also an artist, he's also a polymath, he's brilliant. You know, I'm not here to just like ride this guy all day, but like it is important context.
Well, you mentioned, guys, you slipped by and mentioned 2012 Bitcoin forums. You slipped that into there pretty sly. Guys, think about that before you continue. This dude is doing this shit for fun. He's been around the block forever, probably. Yep. And he wants his creative juices to flow through some of these projects, it seems like.
100%. And so it's all about like decentralization, right? So like that's why I'm in crypto. It's one of the reasons that I like Hex is that it's like trustless yield, and like you could make some centralization arguments about that or whatever, but dude's an OG Bitcoiner, OG Ethereum, big time developer, and has done things that like no one else has done, like has proprietary code for gasless whitelisting, or what we call allow listing for NFT contracts. In the project that we'll start talking about here in a little bit, the first ever geolocation minting of NFTs on chain. His team around him is probably like the most diverse, most technologically sophisticated, most philosophically well-rounded team that I've ever encountered. And you can go to that website and
I want to stop right there because I want to emphasize that you just said that. And again, Orca's so used to saying this shit but it's like, you know, me and Sam are hearing it for the first time. So I want to reiterate, guys, these guys want to make good tech for fun. That's what he said, basically. They want to make life-changing technology, big blockchain-changing technology, because that's what they're into. They want to go hard. They want to philosophically stretch their brains. and they
Yeah,
want
man.
to push forward. They don't want to make the easiest thing to get out as early as it's not like that. Don't think of it as a necessarily the same as like a classic, like a ICO rug pull kind of situation.
Yeah, super anti venture capitalist, like super anti legacy finance hijacking the culture. So a lot of the things that like that I respect, because specifically to get away from the manipulative value extracting culture of squeeze ordinary people dry and like leave them bereft of innovation. When we have like the internet, we have the technology. Oh, did I freeze on you?
A little bit, but we can still hear you.
Coming back. I think I'm coming back. Okay. So like we have the technology to overcome.
This is now it's cutting out a little bit, but
Now,
try taking your picture off for a second and see if that helps.
Let's try this. Yeah, I'm not sure why I'm getting, can't drop the real info.
You're pretty much, I mean, 99% of your speaking has been absolutely perfect. It's just like it does buff out, but like it buffs out hard when it does.
Okay. We'll just see if I
Yeah,
wants to like, yeah, I feel that. I can like see when I start lagging. I'm just going to try and power through it and we'll see what happens. So like we have the technology to.
Oops, you.
my bad. Fuck. That was my fault. Give me 1 second. Let me click on that. And then I'm going to edit your mic set. So sorry. So sorry. Just continue. You're good now.
Like coming to this neck of the woods. So it's really about trying to push decentralization in our lives. And there are a lot of people that are manufacturing clout in this space that have absolutely no right to speak on the stages that they're being given. And it's like, it's frustrating. Okay. So you see people that have hundreds of thousands of followers, people that have millions of followers, and like, they don't know anything about crypto. They don't know anything about Bitcoin. They've probably never read the Nakamoto white paper, probably never read the Ethereum white paper.
Or even sharks and whales and squids in the system. Some of them have
so like
so much financial success, and the gated walls of Hexaco are so strong that they almost think that they know a lot more, but really it's so much information that the people that have traveled to those spaces, I'm like, I don't know shit. Like, me, me, Orga. I go into the room and I'm like, what the fuck you all talking about? Let me know, figure me out. I'll never come into a room until years later where I'm like proficient and where I'm like, hey guys, this is what's good right now. Because I just don't know.
There's levels to this shit, man. Like there's a lot of people that think that they're like crypto rich in this community, and like that's cute, but there's levels to this shit. And there are people that have been around much longer that have much bigger bags and like can't even really offload those bags without totally like pooping where they eat. So it's not to like disrespect on anybody. It's just that like we're in this together, and for us to just like sit in a circle and say like, oh, we're the best is not getting us anywhere. And so like the Orca Twitter handle low-key is just a psyop to like help introduce Hexicans to like some of the information that they're not necessarily hearing. Like Richard does a great job of educating people on info, but also where has he been for like the last
6 months?
6 months, right? So like, as much as I love watching another man flex on his like clothing and stuff, I think it's also important that we be educating ourselves. Like this is prime time to be learning, prime time to be building, prime time to be dollar cost averaging. And there's so much good information out there if you know where to look. So I have now done my job to like prove competency in the space, garner trust. Like I'm really out here trying to build community, but I also am not a maximalist. Like I'm going to challenge viewpoints. I'm going to introduce people to new information and give them at least the opportunity to decide whether or not that information is for them or not. So with regard to like this project, if you are somebody who is interested in learning Web3, this is the perfect amalgamation of a user experience oriented video game that pulls upon nostalgic heartstrings from the olden days of Pokemon on Game Boy, Nintendo, but it uses appropriation art to begin a discourse over some really thought-provoking conversations about intellectual property rights, copyright law, artistic appropriation. And these are all concepts that have existed for thousands of years in our human culture, but that doesn't really get a lot of attention up until recently, if you've seen like the Bored Ape Yacht Club versus Ryder Rip's thing that's going on. So just to give like a quick synopsis on the man, the game, the value prop, you know, just kind of like an elevator pitch.
And very, very, very like basic shit. Like I don't play any games just because like I don't have any appreciation for Pokemon. Like Jersey's trying to like explain the essence of what Pokemon is. This is like somebody who's never had appreciation for games. So like
just like the way that you love. Do you have anything at your like gym stuff or like an old hat that you like a lot, or that's something that you
I like the gym?
What if is there anything in your house that if someone threw away, you'd be like, that was somebody that I knew, like that was my old grandpa.
My bed.
You know how?
No, I mean, no, honestly, no.
But you know what I mean. Like let's say my grandpa gave me a football helmet that was signed by a football player, and I was like, I don't really care about football, but my grandpa gave that to me, so I like to keep it. Like it's almost like that on steroids. Like it's like my brother used to whoop my ass if I got a better card than him, and because we would get one pack each, and if I got a better, I was almost scared to death to get a better card. I was just hoping for mid-grade stuff because my brother would just steal it from me. Or whatever, you know, like it was.
I can break it down for Sam. I can bring him up to speed on Pokemon. So it's a franchise that is a video game where you are a character. You know, all three of us are our own character. It's not like a multiplayer experience. So you're your own individual character, and in that universe, there are these monsters called Pokemon. And the goal of the universe is to acquire those monsters and to battle other people's monsters to achieve like the alpha omega of I'm better at battling monsters than you are. And to achieve that status throughout the universe, there are these people who are what we call gym leaders. And so like they are a little bit a cut above the rest with the quality of how they can train their monsters and do battle. So in the game, your goal is to essentially go out and acquire all the different biodiversity of the monster ecosystem, to battle them in order to improve their strength, right? We call it training. So no different than going to the gym, got to train. And then to reach a level of elitism where you have these bragging rights in the form of what we refer to as gym badges. So it's like, as you beat each person who is a cut above the rest, you get a badge of symbolizing that you actually defeated that person who's extremely talented. And that's really the super short of it. In this context, you're muted. You're muted.
Can you mention to him, we'll just cut through it real quick because this is what he wants to know. The click-through rate, not the click-through rate, but how big is Pokemon? It's the biggest game in the world, other than like Colts that still play Magic the Gathering and like Grand Theft Auto 5, but like in terms of like video game culture and like global presence, it's the biggest. And we know this because like Pokemon Go is a multi-billion-dollar franchise built on like the tail end of a 22-year mega saga of this like world that they have built. So everybody who is like born in the 90s or earlier 100% knows about Pokemon. At least has heard of it. Yes.
Not that they've necessarily played it, but they've definitely. It really meshes with the age group of crypto really hard. 100%.
Because what do I always say about the age group to crypto? It's like 17 to like 40. But like the bulk of the cash flow is going to be coming from those mid 20s to 35-year-olds that are just like cranking it out. You know what I mean? You know, or that's probably just a fair average. So Sam, I'm in my mid 30s and my wife and I have been collecting since 95. Yeah, Sam. So I'm not going to pull this up, but I'll just mention it. So you know Jake crazy. Paul, right, Sam? The Paul brothers. Yeah. He walked out in his most recent boxing exhibition, which was the biggest boxing exhibition that almost has ever, you know, in any promotion, with a Charizard card, just like this. Pretend this is a card with a you know, protective thing over top of it that was like over $500,000. So the card, it's a real card that someone got from a pack at some point, a normal ass pack, and because it was not moved or touched or it was a condition, It was, I don't know the price, but I'm guaranteeing it was over 500 grand. And that's because the nostalgia level, it's just one of those things. It's like the top thing. It's just like it happened and it was the biggest thing at the time. And it's still to this day, auctions online. You go to YouTube right now, there's channels. They open up Pokemon cards.
Yeah,
Wow.
Motley and I were literally joking last night in a Twitter space where like we can recall memories of like when you're a kid in the backseat of the car and your family's like going on a trip and it's like nighttime. We would have these Game Boys, and back then there wasn't a backlight to the Game Boy, so like if it's dark, you can't see anything. So you'd be like angling your screen to try and catch the like passing light of the stoplight to be able to like see long enough. And like you probably had like a photographic memory of the entire Pokemon world. So like you kind of knew where to go, and all you needed was like that glimmer of light for a second to be like, oh yes, I'm headed the right way. But it was stuff like that, man. And everybody would have like Pokemon cards that they would trade. But so like that's just it's just a fun game that people really fell in love with. It found the perfect balance of like emotional intelligence meets excitement, childlike wonder, and it really brought together a whole world full of
Real rarity.
Get into that.
Getting those hardest Pokemon was really hard. Like it was not, it was like hundreds of hours, Sam. You needed to be on the Game Boy or whatever game you were playing. They were doing stuff that they didn't probably extrapolate at the time, but like the amount of hours that kids at that time were spending in front of a wireless, pretty crazy to think about at the time.
Right.
But we were all outside, me and my brother, everyone in the neighborhood on our Game Boys, sitting in a circle. Like, you know what I mean? And that was those were cell phones before. That was in 98. That was in 98. Me and all my buddies were playing. They scaled that thing. God damn. Those guys were absolutely insane. Let's get into Pokegon now. How does it relate? Where does it come in? Some of that funny game theory you were mentioning that's like so interesting. Let's go into the Pokegon system. That would be notnintendo.com would be the best place to go to learn.
So the Not Nintendo universe has taken this concept of utilizing cutting edge technology, literally, and we'll discuss the technology, but it's truly cutting edge technology that is generating a new art form that will give a nostalgic callback to the creatures that people are familiar with in Pokemon. And it, instead of just being a game that people are like going to play and it's like, okay, I have these things, I collect these monsters and I train them, whatever. That is fine and that's fun. But things that like Sam and GRC would definitely care about are that the game is actually designed for the user experience to be a Web3 education course. And
that's cool.
And so whereas the original Pokemon game, you just battled monsters and then you got your gym badge, in Pokegon, you're actually going to prove on-chain competency in order to acquire badges. So like the most basic badge is called the Goblin badge, right? Like Goblin Town. And Goblin badge, you have to prove that like you can start a new private key, learn how to store it safely, learn how to send an asset from MetaMask, all of these like really basic skills, learn what Bitcoin is, learn how money works. And the game has built-in learning materials so that if you were a kid who was picking up the Pokemon game, you could become competent in Web3.
Okay,
and,
question on this, because I have my dad who's 70-something years old, and he is going to be getting into crypto. This sounds like something, I mean, assuming that the UI is friendly enough for somebody who's like not necessarily using tech every fucking day. They know how to use a smartphone, they know how to use a computer, and they enjoy learning still at that age. But like, is this something that like I could get and he would be, capable of going through that with relative ease?
I would think so. If you can control up, down, left, right arrow keys and the Z key on your keyboard and the X key on your keyboard, those are the controls. So you're really just like a little avatar that's going to navigate a 2D world and bump into other characters who will kind of help you along the plot of learning this Web3 stuff. The learning experience is mostly in the form of like video tutorials. So like you're basically walking to and fro YouTube videos from a very reliable source, boiled down to really what you need to know, and not like a 6-hour YouTube video of some guy that's really just kind of like, doing his influencer thing for it all day. So like excuse me, the content really does evolve though. So like from the most basic, that's stuff that people are probably like, okay, yeah, I get that. But it quickly becomes an experience where everything from vetting smart contracts to be able to identify if they're rug pulls or scams, to NFTs that might have malicious code within them, learning how to vet these things so that you don't have to always rely on 100 different people on Twitter telling you if it's safe or not. There are skills for learning effective technical analysis. And this is coming from a person who could live trade any of us under the table on like an Ethereum chart and could leverage trade his way out of homelessness, like very highly skilled technical analysis traders, as well as fundamental analysis. I know that you don't like the technical analysis. There's also the fundamental analysis. So being able to identify what projects are really pitching like valuable intrinsic code, as opposed to just like, well, community comes and number goes up, but more like, what are some of the key differentiating qualities that some projects might have that are less beneficial to your bags, and some that might be structured differently, and those are more likely to succeed if you're interested in number go up. All the way to the Ether badge, which is the 7th badge, the final badge in the game, will only be obtained if you learn the competencies to be able to produce your own smart contract and your own NFT smart contract. So you're going all the way from like, every time that you've had to onboard some normie into crypto, and it's like, okay, you have to get a MetaMask. Like you're going to learn from that level all the way to like, you have a cool idea that you think belongs on the blockchain, we'll teach you how to do it. So
okay, the video can be over at this point. I'm ready.
right. So
that's what I was
really
saying
cool.
last night. That's what I was saying last night. I was like, I just kept mentioning the 60 hours plus. I was like, 60 hours plus, like that's what I need. It's basically free.
Yep. So that's the thing, is like the equivalent value of like going to GameStop and buying a AAA video game title, like buying a new NBA sports game that usually costs like $65. For about that cost in Ethereum, you can get a Pokegan, which is an NFT, which I'm about to get into the tech behind this, because like the educational content is really what I think most people need to hear about. But then for nerds, there's so much more to this.
We're gonna get into the weeds, guys. So if you want all this information, you just listen up. All right. I'll be done here in about 45 minutes. And if you can't wait 45 minutes, then screw it. Go figure it out yourself.
Yeah,
we're gonna figure out all of this stuff and make sure everyone's safe throughout the whole process, guys. But just wait. I'm not gonna answer every question and buff up the whole fucking conversation.
Word.
I love
and like,
you guys.
I'll do Twitter Spaces and stuff that we can chat about. I'm also gonna help direct you guys to Omakasi's Twitter Spaces so that you can learn from him. But like, one thing I do want to clarify is I have volunteered to share exposure for a person who like doesn't need any help gaining exposure. So it would mean a lot to me if you don't shamelessly, forcefully shill things at this person who, I promise you, if you're watching a YouTube video about crypto right now, he knows more about crypto than you do. So you don't have to try and convince him of anything's value. You don't have to try and tell him that you found the shining light on the hill. I promise you, he's aware of it. He knows all of this already. So
it's a great point to make. Like, it's a great point to make overall, I think. Overall.
And dude, and to the Hexagon's credit, last night when I like took a break, so I've been minting Pokegon for Hexagons for over 11 hours straight, and just a ton of people want in, and so like I'm happy to do it. The mint phase ends July 1st, so like it's a limited amount of time between now and the end of the ability to mint these. On July 1st, the supply is capped. There will be no more Pokegon. There's less than 2,000 in circulation right now, but once July 1 hits, that's it. However many there are, there are.
How are you still up for taking people on for? And again, I don't want to put any pressure on you because I don't know your shit and I don't know how any of this works. But it seems like if we're going to get into this a little bit more, I sent you last night 0.62 ETH or something times 3, and that's what he asked for the mint at that time, and others were doing so. And there's 2 days left on this thing, guys. And again, if this is not a lot of money, I don't care what anyone says. I mean, half the guys on here fucking have $6 million or more. It's like I spent $200 to have a good ass time and potentially get 60 plus hours of Web3 education, and I get to support something that's fun during a bear market that's valuable and cool. and the tech is awesome. Real quick, I'm just going to drop the link before he goes. Again, guys, share this out. Let everyone know we're in here. This week, we've gotten EVMOS airdrops for everyone. We're doing Pokegon minting. Guys, tonight I'm going on to check out the demo for the Internet Money Wallet. And guys, I'm covering everything, and I'm only covering the stuff that's really cool to me. And this is really cool to me.
Let me just clear it up. Do not DM him yet, because there's details he's gonna want from you before you DM him. So wait for these details before you DM him, please.
Or you're getting the shittiest color.
Right. So I'll get into those details in a second. I just wanted to touch on, like, I'm really proud of Hexicans, because today, before I was getting ready for the show, a couple of people that are in a lot of my Twitter spaces, like Tic Tac and a few others, were in Omoc's space on the stage. Nobody had to bring up crypto. That space has been going now for like 2 days straight. They have been discussing philosophy, art, law,
Dating.
crypto, investing, dating, tons of different topics. Nobody has had to get on there and shill a project. So, like, please raise the level. Stop identifying as a token on the internet. Like, you are better than that. You are not what you invest in. You don't have to self-identify as these things. I love them too, but I don't like walk up to people in my everyday life and go like, hey, did you know that I'm actually just a manifested ERC20 that walks around and all I can do is show myself? Like, it's not who I am. I actually have a personality, which is why I get to hang out with girls. So you should try it sometime if you're into that stuff.
There's so much, and the reason that, to give this context, the reason that he's saying this is because if you look at anybody's like who has some amount of attention on Twitter, and there's anything slightly related to crypto in there, and there's 60 or 80 comments, most of them is just dog shit people trying to fucking spam the shit out of whatever fucking thing that they like, and it might just be Paulson, it might just be fucking bullshit around Hex. Like he's saying, grow the fuck up and use your personality to engage with people and build relationships.
The depth of humanity is so much deeper.
The future is multi-chain too, like, you know, in my opinion at least. Like,
well, like imagine that you're in this great fight, right, against censorship. That's what crypto is about. It's censorship resistant ability to have transparency within transactions, autonomous transactions between sovereign individuals. So imagine that there's this boogeyman, right? And the boogeyman is trying to censor your free speech. It's trying to censor your freedom to transact with people on your own terms. And then you decide to paint yourself into a corner and you say, I'm only going to use this one tool to fight my way out of the corner. Why would you do that to yourself? Be really open-minded and embrace all of the different tools, because one day you might not have access to the one that you love the most. So if you can separate your emotions and begin to see it as like, the more literate and competent I become with all of these other tools, the more I can build and expand my horizon. And that's really what it comes down to.
And from like an analogy that some people could relate to, who because there's probably a lot of dudes watching, if you build shit, right, whether it's construction or tables or carpentry and stuff, you start with like learning how to maybe use a hammer or a drill or a saw, and as you progress on your journey, and that is, we're relating this to crypto, right, you're like, okay, Hex is fucking cool, and you like that shit, cool, that is one, that's your saw, that's your hammer, that's the foundational thing that you like, you enjoy. As you build your expertise, as you continue to grow and develop, you realize that there's all these other tools that maybe you don't use as much, but they're still super valuable when that appropriate time comes where you need to have access to that tool or be able to provide value to somebody else or whatever the case is. And by expanding your horizon on all this different type of stuff, you can grow stronger through this process. But please, I want to learn more about this Pokegon. Yeah,
you bet. So Pokegon is super dope because of the educational content. I'll drop things like the link tree and stuff. Bullish, here's a link if you want to throw this up for people to be able to go and look at. But
yeah, whatever you need me to pull up or share on screen, I can do it.
Pull up the Twitter and just drop their Twitter in there, probably, because I think
so that link tree has their social handles as well as like the badges, and that has the description of all the different competencies that you'll learn. So a lot of people are like, how are they getting away with calling this not Nintendo, right? It's like pretty direct shout out to a company that is super famous for suing the pants off of everybody that tries to touch any of their content. This is where there is so much more to discuss in the world of crypto than like money token number go up, like there's philosophy, and part of the philosophical nature of humans is our artistic expression and the free expression thereof. And so appropriation art is a very old form of communication where artists recontextualize art that already exists, sometimes by changing the art, sometimes by not changing the art at all, and simply changing the context and subtext of the conversation behind it to reframe how individuals are discussing the impact and the emotional depth of the work. And so Not Nintendo is clearly not Nintendo, right? They're making that very obvious. But then they are taking the actual like physical trademarked, I don't even want to say art, visuals, and they are changing them and recontextualizing them. So this isn't a game about chasing monsters and becoming the very best like no one ever was. It's about learning on Web3 and also about having these discussions about the freedom of expression and about artistic freedom. And so the really cool thing about Pokegan, the reason that it's called Pokegan, G-A-N, is a GAN is a real thing. It's not like a random word. It's a generative adversarial network. And what that is essentially a system of artificial intelligences, one that you can think of as like a distributor and one that you can think of as a validator. And what you do in this artificial intelligence dynamic is you feed source data. In this case, the source data are images. The images are all of the pictures of Pokemon from the last 22 years of the franchise's existence. The distributor sends an image, typically like the source image, to the validator and says, hey, is this a real Pokemon image from the source data? And then the validator has to observe the image, go through all of its data that it can observe, and say yes or no. And so the distributor is trying to fool the validator by every now and then slipping in a new image that is not from the source data. And then the validator has to decide, hey, maybe that's actually not a legitimate original. And so every single iteration of a distributor sending a input to the validator results in a zero-sum game. Either the distributor wins by fooling the validator, or the validator wins by catching a fake distributed by the distributor. But when these zero-sum game event scores tally up each round, whoever loses, whichever AI loses, has to adjust its approach, its strategy, in order to try to win the next round. So at first, you're just sending the legitimate source pictures, and the validator's going, yep. I got a pretty good idea now after thousands of these images that this is what the original image source looks like. And then the distributor slips in a new image, and the validator hopefully goes, oh, that's a fake. And if it does detect that it's a fake, then the distributor has to rework how it's going to manufacture the next generative art that it is trying to defeat its adversary with in this artificial intelligence network. By doing this, the AIs actually are creating brand new art. They are utilizing this kind of like test of authenticity as the basis for generating brand new images that never existed in the source data, and refining those images to the point where the validator starts to believe that it is in fact the source data. It can't separate the two. And so Pokegan takes the whole 22-year catalog of Pokemon that have ever existed, and it has fed these GAN machines for about 18 months until they have created the first 150 Pokegan. Then those 150 Pokegan become sort of like the genetic parents to all of the mints that we're now doing. There's an unlimited number of mints between now and July 1. And the imagery, which is not revealed yet, that'll be revealed on July 1st, is based on the original source data that has been trained in the GAN system, and then the Pokegan being trained in the GAN system. And so what you end up with are things that, when you look at it, if you're familiar with Pokemon, you'd be like, that kind of looks like Pokemon. But it's not Pokemon. It's not any Pokemon you'll ever recognize. But you'll see some characteristics where you'll be like, man, that kind of looks familiar. Where have I seen that before? And that is the essence of appropriating the original artwork in such a way that it actually yields brand new art. And this is the fucking crazy, this is the craziest part of the entire project, in my opinion. Every NFT that you mint generates its own unique pickle file, the Python file, that will exist in their headquarters, in their massive database. And as you play the game and you gain experience, let me come back real quick. This internet doesn't. Okay, here we go.
There we go.
As you play the game and your Pokegon gain experience, much like in the Pokemon world, they can evolve. But in Pokemon, you knew what you were going to get. Charmander evolves into Charmeleon, evolves into Charizard. It's just a natural family evolution. But in Pokegon, your unique NFT, which corresponds to a hosted pickle file, will actually evolve into a never before seen new Pokegon. And the metadata associated with your NFT will actually change during that evolution process. So you are creating like this new breed of animals, like artificial intelligence animals that are also associated with your gameplay. So there are some like really quick, easy videos you can watch on GAN technology. It's super cutting edge. Just to give you an idea of like how special this team of developers are, this is the first NFT project with a geolocation mint phase. I happen to be on what's called an allow list. So I can mint from anywhere in the world, as many as I want, up until July 1. If you did not get on that list, your only other alternative besides going through a friend like me who can do it OTC for you, or buying on the secondary market, currently at a premium, thank you, Motley, is to be at these coordinates that Not Nintendo Labs has tweeted out. So you would have to actually go in the real world and run around until you get to one of these locations. And then they have enough like mitigation techniques within their technology to be able to identify that you're not spoofing your location online, that you're actually boots on the ground at these locations. And then you would be able to mint your own. They're the first people to ever do that on chain. The Pokegon, the generative adversarial network art, this will be the first appropriation art project that utilizes GAN technology as the medium through which they produce the art in the collection. So the tensor cores that they had to acquire in order to be able to produce the compute power behind this project is insane. You and I can't go out and buy these computers. They're not available to us. You'd have to be a trusted partner or reseller, and you would have to have super close connections because there's so much demand for these. There's just not enough supply. So they own about 8 of them. They're going to continue to buy more of these machines to improve like the compute power, the speed, the diversity that they're able to produce, specifically in the Not Nintendo universe. But this is stuff that's not, this isn't your JPEG monkeys, okay? This is like really high level tech geek, artistic melding of two worlds. So you're getting totally unique art experience, totally unique NFT experience with regard to the file that will exist within your MetaMask wallet and hosted on a computer network in Bali. You're getting the 60 plus hours of education. You're getting, right now, I'm kind of telling you who's giving you the information, which is probably within itself enough to evolve your social skills, crypto skills, finance skills, philosophy skills, to levels that just are not being discussed broadly on a day-to-day basis, all for about the price of a AAA video game at GameStop.
Is this going to also the game, as in the education, is that going to continue to expand? Is that world of education going to continue to grow and evolve?
It'll be interesting to see. A lot of what they have in there is probably more than most people will ever on their own achieve in Web3 literacy. So it's a lot to like get your hands around. But Not Nintendo Labs is the beginning. So there was a really cool photograph to give you an idea of what this individual, like how his passion meets his productivity. Extremely talented cryptographic puzzle producer, solver, and like advocate for expanding creative problem solving. So he took a picture of a company laptop at their headquarters, a couple of people like sitting on a couch, and the screen is pretty dim. But if you were to like screenshot the image that they shared and zoom way, way, way in, you could read a couple of things on the laptop screen. One of the things that stood out to me was a line item called Donkey Frong. So think like Donkey Kong, but it's appropriated, right? So there will be additions to the Not Nintendo universe that we have no idea about yet. Like we don't even really know a lot about what we're getting into with Pokegon. So like there's more than we can possibly chew on for now. And the pace at which their creativity continues to produce useful innovation in the space will far outpace the like ability to keep up. For PBM's point, you don't have to go out in the real world to capture stuff for a virtual game. I'm minting it for people. That's just like one of the ways that you would be able to gain access if you weren't part of the original allow list. And if you didn't have contacts in the space, it's just like a fun way to get that involved.
It's an exclusive minting going on right now, guys. Exclusive.
It reminds me of two different companies. One on the AI ML side of things, right, relating to imagery, and Tesla, because they're basically you're creating a simulation of reality, which is Pokemon, but this simulation is almost very, very like identical to this in many characteristics, but it's slightly different. They're just calling it a simulation versus art, right? And it's changed in such a way where this new thing is different, but it is so close to this in a lot of different ways. But then also there's a company in either Russia or in Asia that pays attention to the US market. And when there's a company that is successful here, what they do is they just fucking copy the fuck out of them, right? And they call it, instead of Amazon, they called it whatever it was. Instead of Uber, they called it something else. And they take whatever's, they did Airbnb too. And they take this model and then they just copy it. And then they have this conglomerate of different companies, and they just do this right here. So you have these very, very successful legacy games with nostalgia, which is underpriced at this moment. And they're utilizing this along with this AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning to come up with something, bringing these together. This is fascinating, dude.
Okay,
super
so
cool stuff.
I'm sorry. I'm seeing Brazology's comments. Bro, they're doxed. They are not adversarial. And if you don't understand why reading the MetaMask permissions that pop up on screen would tell you whether or not you're engaging in adversarial contracts, then the game is for you, dog, because you need to understand that what you're like worrying about is just not like a concern. It asks for it's asking for you to sign a read-only function so that you can prove that you're the holder of the private keys that are going to be accessing. So like you sign your wallet so that it can verify whether or not you're on the allow list. And like, yeah, I guess you could live in a world of paranoia and never read a contract, but like the contract is published, it's been audited. You can go and look at all of the functions that it calls for. You can read your MetaMask and understand like what it's gaining access to, and none of it's adversarial. So,
or just use a fresh wallet if you.
Yeah, or do all of it. Like do all of those
things. When we're doing this kind of stuff, I mean, there are some assumptions that can be made, like. You don't. First of all, you don't have to start clicking shit the second you hear about it. But I mean, Orca's clearly devoted many hours into focusing on this, and he's been here for a very, 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 very long time. So if you extrapolate those two things, and
for Brazology's point, I do know what he's talking about with that initial signature. That's just because they have the allow list function that they're reading for. So it just wants you to sign in so that it's able to scrape whether or not you have the metadata to prove that you're on the allow list, like to match up with their internal list. But it's not adversarial. They're 100% docs. They've been doing this shit for a decade. Like it's not, they can come up with far less work-intensive ways to steal your crypto if they want that. So, like this is
first ever geolocation, like
man, like going super out of their way to utilize like some of the most expensive graphics.
What they're making is
like $10.
What is an allow list?
So, like people have heard of whitelist. It's just like a woke way of saying whitelist. It's just an allow list. You just have the permissions to engage with the smart contract. So like to mint an NFT, typically you can just go to a contract on Etherscan, go to the write function, WRITE, write, like you're writing, and you can put in the information, the pay amount, and you can mint that NFT. These NFTs are not mintable from contract. So the only way that you can mint is in the gameplay itself, is to actually go to notnintendo.com and run around in the virtual world. And the only way that you can get into the room that allows you to mint Pokegon is to be on the allow list or to be at a geolocation that they have tweeted out, one of the several coordinates that they have tweeted out, so that you can actually go and do your minting. So it's just like a fancy word for whitelisted. But yeah, like I would highly recommend that people maybe attend some of his Twitter spaces, and like you're bound to learn some really cool information in the Web3 space. But if you gain even just a shred of understanding of the career that these people have had in Web3 and outside of Web3, highly successful before Web3, they don't care about your crypto, dog. They're not trying to steal from you. In fact, they've done projects similar to this in the past called like the Web3 Bootcamp, which had different skills that you could learn. And like that was highly successful. I did the Web3 Bootcamp. It was super useful to learn a lot of different tips and tricks for understanding what you're engaging on the blockchain.
I'm excited to obtain this information.
And like they have on his link tree, like I'm not trying to get people to like go and hunt down how to dox people, but like they have the ability for you to like reach out for consultation. On the Omakase Kitchen, you can like get a premium license, and they will basically give you just tenfold, maybe 100-fold the value of like guidance and consultation and collaboration that you would never get if you were like an aspiring artist and you, or like a small company and you guys are trying to get into the NFT space. Like you will never get the amount of dedication and just blatant genius that these people are able to provide, because they are about the culture. Now, I'm not saying like, hey, go get a bunch of your VC normies and try to jump into Web3 to hijack people's finances. Like,
where do we obtain that information of said group?
Well, it's not a group. It's more of like if you had a legitimate business inquiry, there are communication links that you can access to be like, maybe you have a collaboration.
You could pay to talk to them. Yes,
yeah, that's probably fair to say.
I love that. I love that.
And I'll shoot you the links for that.
Sam knows I love that ability. The first time I ever messaged him, I was like, "Can I talk to you for money?" I was like, just like, I didn't even know what a consultation was. I was like, "I want to speak to you, but I know you have no reason to speak to me, so I'll pay you." And he was like, "Yeah, sure."
This is interesting that this is their 2.0 version too, so to speak, in the education or
yeah, I mean, it's probably like the 7.0 legitimately. Like the person has an extreme passion for raising the level in crypto, right? So like we want a decentralized future. We really do. And we're not going to get there if everybody just jumps in with like, oh, that's too complicated. I don't want to learn how that works. Just give me an exchange and I'll buy Bitcoin and I'll hodl. And it's like, well, you're not actually buying Bitcoin.
Well, that's
so
the
you're
exact
not
opposite. So it's literally the opposite. It's exactly what already occurs. And we need there to be at some point, if you're not going to follow the leader, because we know who the leaders are going to be if you let them. If you let those guys be the leaders and you give them all the clicks and you give them all your attention, and you, when they're streaming about crypto on CNN, you're following along with your computer. Like that's what we're trying to avoid. And the scaling problem is huge. What do we know about Pokemon? Like automatic scale, like because of the history there. But you know what I mean? Like it seems like maybe they're also trying to spread their wings to see if there is some more scaling they can do for and this is like a fun way to scale, right?
But it's also interesting that the way they did it from a community aspect of it, because I like Orca's talking about this and I'm like, oh, okay, this makes perfect sense. If he earlier mentioned that these folks don't like VC, right? And if there is something that is, potentially very valuable in terms of what it's offering, whether the NFT goes up in value or not is independent of the value prop of the fucking thing that you're getting into, right?
100%.
And sometimes those things can be gamed, right? And so in order to bring in a social aspect of it, so to speak, whether it is, physical location or talking to somebody on the internet like Orca, or I think you mentioned there's another way to do it. You could do OTC, like OpenSea or something like that, to just go buy one if you cared to do something like that.
Which, by the way, just because I hate OpenSea, if you are going to use an NFT marketplace, use like x2y2.io, because they have less fees going to the VC side of the game. And like OpenSea is not crypto. Like they take all the ETH that they get every month and they dump it on your head. So like you're basically just shooting yourself in the foot when you buy an NFT on OpenSea. And there are other platforms that are way better for like supporting the creative side as well as your own bags. Like you can actually maintain more of the value, lower fee scraping, things like that.
So how does this work? So somebody buys the NFT and then that gives them access to the game or something?
Yep. So you'll have access to, and here's where there's a little bit of mystery, and this is why I personally FOMO a little bit. Like I'm not afraid to admit that. There is not a disclosure yet in terms of like, do you only need one Pokegon to achieve all of the badge content? Do you need a full team? Like in the original Pokemon, you could have like 6 Pokemon in your belt, is what you called it, that you brought around with you. So it's like, do I need to have 6? Do I only need 1? I do know that like to access at least the introductory content, like 1 will be enough. 1 will suffice. And so I personally, yes, Molly, x2y2.io, correct. The way that I went about it was similar to Motley, where I kind of like, okay, I'll get like 1 of each. Just kidding, I'm gonna get like 100. And so it was like, I don't want to miss out on the opportunity. It's also like you were saying, so the value of the NFT, you could think of that, and when I say value, I mean the price. The price of these NFTs can be maybe more aligned to like the price of the Pokemon trading cards. You know, it's visual artwork that has lore behind it, has a story behind it, has some level of social engagement where, hey, do you want to trade this for that maybe? But then in terms of like the value proposition, it's very much so the educational content as well as the user experience. These guys are gamers, man. Like they love playing video games. They're code junkies. Like the game, from every description that I have, right? And I'm not on the team, I'm not a coder or anything, but it is designed to be an extremely immersive user experience so that you can have that dopaminergic rush. I love when you guys say that. The dopaminergic rush of like your nostalgia kicking in and going like, yeah, dude, I'm playing Pokemon again. But this time the stakes are higher. It's like I'm learning Web3 and maybe I'll sell my Pokegon one day and I'll cover my cost of entry, maybe even make a little profit. And I've gleaned all of this education along the way.
I'm always the info guy. Like I'll spend endless money if someone can just say the end of the info line ends here. Like there's really good dense info here. That's always what I look for, because in my life I've learned that always supersedes my financial situation, and it just gets me to the next level faster when I do decide to make a move. Because those moves, I can never time them. Like things come into my life, opportunities always present themselves to me. I can only put myself in the position to be like A1. That's what for me, right? Because I'm also younger and I'm kind of like doing my thing. So it's really interesting. I mean, this is absolutely interesting, guys. Share the link. We're going to talk more about this. Share the link. We're setting everyone up with the amount and the color options so that when you send your stuff over to him, if you could do it in one nice, beautiful sentence, it would be
I guess like these are the details I would like. First, let me know what the Ethereum address is that the funds are coming from and that you want the NFTs to go to. So hopefully it's just one, but I understand if you have like, oh, I'm sending it from an exchange and then I need it sent here. But I need to know at least where the NFTs need to go to. Second, tell me which color or colors you want. I'll mint as many as you want. Ask Molly. I will take the time. I'll mint as many as you want. But if you don't tell me what colors you want, then I'm like sitting over here waiting for info from you. It's hard to chase you down. I've done hundreds of mints now. And like, it's going to maybe spiral to the point where what if we don't make contact by the time the mint phase is up? So tell me where the NFTs got to go, how many NFTs and of which colors you want. And then that's pretty much all I need. I will provide my ETH address. I'll throw it in the chat real quick.
Oh, I didn't know if you wanted me to do that, but I can throw it in there if you want.
Yeah, dude, it's totally fine. That's like it's just a community docs wallet that I've made specifically for NFTs in the Omakase marketplace so that you can see ETH comes in, NFTs go out to the people that sent the ETH in. Like, I'm not fully doxed. There are a lot of people on Twitter that follow me that know who I am. So like I'm pseudo doxed, if that counts for anything. But there's, I have no interest in like ripping you off. I'm charging 0.062 ETH, which when you consider all of the gas fees, send fees, the time that I'm putting into it, it's a hell of a deal. And if you
round
don't
that
want
number to the nearest tenth for him too. He's
He's not charging anything. And not to cut you off, but I want to add this, and then I'll drop down because you said something in space yesterday, which is alone by itself worth the value proposition. You're getting about 60 hours of top-notch education for a little bit over $1 an hour.
Yep, that's really what it translates to. You're spending like $1 an hour for the educational content per mint. So yeah, please send me the info first. Like I'm still trying to chase down probably 3 or 4 people who shot ETH into my wallet, and like I'm happy to mint you an NFT and send it back, but I don't want to send it back and then you go, oh, but I wanted red, and like now I'm the bad guy because you couldn't be bothered to just help me make it easy on myself.
So list those again. You need they're gonna obviously need your address. They're gonna want to know what fucking color, right? And you can pick any like color you want. You know,
there's
like,
the colors are the colors are blue, purple, and red. So Sam, you wouldn't know this, but in the original Pokemon video game, the reason that we're talking about these colors that we're minting from is because you wake up in the house and you go to this scientist's lab, and he has these 3 options for you to pick from. There's a red one, a green one, and a blue one. And those are the starting Pokemon that everyone selects from. Our options are blue, purple, and red. So it's slightly different. And in Pokemon, you actually got to see a little visual of the one that you're kind of engaging in. It's like, are you sure that you want Squirtle? Are you sure that you want Charmander? Are you sure that you want Bulbasaur? In this, we don't actually know what we're getting because it's a unique pickle file. All of your Pokegon are going to have their own genetic uniqueness built into their metadata. So I can't.
So even 2 blues are going to be different, basically, is what you're saying.
Because remember when he was almost talking about that regenerative AI system that they have, and it snapshots it and it like keeps kind of changing it due to whatever parameters are up. It's kind of like a self-evolving system to like keep it unique comparatively to the copyright or whatever I guess they base it on.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, like the way that it basically works is that the team came together and harvested images of every single Pokemon that was ever created. And there's 22 years of this franchise, so thousands of images. And then they take those images and they train the artificial intelligence to be able to produce 150 original genetic parents.
Seems like a rug.
Pokegon.
Seems like
right? And then of those 150 genetic parents, they produce the metadata for we're now up into like the 1700, maybe 1800 mark for mints. To give you an idea, Bored Ape Yacht Club has 10,000 NFTs in their collection. We're less than 2,000 still. Bored Ape Yacht Club is basically like, hey, spend $7,000 or more to get like a cover charge paid for so that you can go and drink with people and get COVID in New York. This is like, hey, there's less than 2,000 of us right now, costs fractions of that NFT. The art is way more sophisticated. The content is 60 plus hours of education, and you're going to get to play a game, which if you're not into gaming, play it for the education. If you are into gaming, you're probably going to skirt around some of the education just to play the internal game mechanisms for a while and solve puzzles and stuff. So there's a lot of different reasons why I'm bullish on this. And I'm not like, I'm a collector, dude, when it comes to NFTs. I know how hard it is for artists to make money. I have a couple of friends who are professional artists. It's very difficult for them to be able to like generate a living. And so I will go out of my way if I can track the provenance, if I know where the art originated from, who the person is behind the project, what their passions are, having these conversations out in the open and stuff, that is valuable to me. So I will pay to support their career, because we all talk about like, oh, we're paying for overpriced JPEGs, and that's cool. But if you just extrapolate the reality that like, no matter how hard you grind and no matter how productive oriented your lifestyle is, you rely on entertainment at some point to not go crazy. So like if you ever Netflix and chill, thank an artist. If you ever read an advertisement for a cheeseburger, thank an artist. If you ever listen to a song on your iPhone, thank an artist. Like these things don't just fall from the sky. Some of them are highly corporatized and centralized in their development. I don't really care for that stuff. I'm in it for decentralization. So when I see that there are grassroots artists out here who are trying to build their skills and feed themselves, I will go and collect that art. So I own tons of NFTs that I'll never sell. and that I have no interest in selling because I've already accomplished the goal. I supported the artist who made something that I found emotionally and visually appealing, and that is enough for me.
On a semantic side of things, do you keep a separate wallet where you just put your NFTs?
I have tons of wallets, dude. I have countless wallets. So like sometimes it's like depends on my mood, honestly. Like I have wallets for specific artists, and it's like I put all of this artist's work in here. I have some wallets that are just like a catch-all that was like, well, that was last August. I bought all these NFTs then, and that's in that wallet. I have some wallets where it's like, this is only, so like the community wallet that I'm doing right now, it's like the only NFTs that have ever touched that wallet, the provenance can be tracked back to Omakase. 99% of them are Pokegon. One of them is on-chain cocaine, and the other is MEV. So, but all of them, whether it's Pokegon or those other two I mentioned, come from that one artist. So like the provenance in that wallet all tracks back to one place. So it's easy for me to keep that in mind.
Define simply provenance, because there's going to be people who don't know what that means. The originality of it. Talk about it.
So people like to speculate on the price of tokens, right? Hey, what's the price of Hex going to be? What's the price of Bitcoin going to be? Provenance is what gives art its value. Art doesn't have intrinsic value. Sam and I can look at a Basquiat and he can say, I don't care, I don't want that. And I can say, I'll pay $1 bajillion for that. There's no metric here. There's no objective, quantitative, like work that we can do to, in the dark in two different rooms, come to the same answer every time. Whereas if he's in his room and I'm in my room, we can say 2 + 2 = 4. We're going to come to that conclusion every time. Provenance is the origination as well as the chain of custody of a creative piece, a creative work. So the reason that the Beatles albums are so valuable isn't just because Michael Jackson was willing to pay a ton of money for them. It was also because the Beatles are who they are, and people really liked who they are, and people wanted to own things that came from their creative source. People like Basquiat's creative source. There's also the appropriation of provenance. Like not every Basquiat, not every Banksy is a Banksy. Like he's taking credit for things that aren't his, but because the artists were able to achieve the spirit of his work, and it might also financially benefit him, he is more willing to say like, that is a Banksy. And who's to tell anybody what a Banksy is but Banksy himself? So provenance is just understanding the creative origin of energy that produced a work, as well as the ownership of who has touched and owned that work. So maybe an empty bottle of Coca-Cola isn't worth very much, but if Andy Warhol paints a picture of that bottle of Coca-Cola and you know that that is that specific bottle, and then he just throws it into a crowd of people, people are more likely to fight each other over that empty bottle of Coca-Cola than they are over the one that I just threw in the trash on my way to a concert. So like the chain of custody also has an aspect to it. And that's why you'll see in that community wallet, all of the provenance tracks back to one particular artist or team. And that is my way of saying like, hey, this wallet, we support this artist. This is who this wallet is aiming at, so that whether or not you like Pokegon, maybe you're like, that's really dumb. And then you see on-chain cocaine and you're like, that's kind of fun. I like that project. Well, you're going to find out that it's actually the same person. So if you like one of them, maybe keep your eye out to support anything that they do if you have the discretionary income, because that allows them to propagate creative work into the future. So if you have like a movie producer that you really love, you should probably try to occasionally pay for a box office ticket or pay for a DVD instead of just always ripping it. Now, I'm all about decentralization. I'm all for right-click save the NFT, but those artists are going to starve to death if they aren't finding some financial benefit. So as much as I'm willing to go and right-click save a bunch of NFT pictures that I like, I will also go and mint NFTs and make sure that the money hits the artist's pocket, because I want them to keep being creative. I'm not a good artist in terms of drawing. I don't do coding. So for me, a lot of what I bring to the table is like spoken and written word. Okay, not as like aesthetically pleasing as a beautiful painting. And so when I see people that can produce those creative efforts that I'm not very naturally skilled at.
It can be an orgasm in the ears, though. It can be an orgasm in the ears or the eyes, right? If you're reading something good.
Right. And that's what it's all about, man. It's like things that create the human experience, right? Without artists, we don't have the human experience. And so we don't want to become robots. We want to enjoy the totality of the emotional spectrum that we have the privilege of experiencing as things that aren't rabbits. So if there are people that are producing works of art that move you emotionally, not every single dollar that you earn has to go into a finance token. Maybe you would say, you know what, that actually had an effect on my day, and I can afford to support that artist. Maybe I'm going to do that. And maybe that will bring a quality of life that you weren't going to get with money. What's all the money in the world worth if you're never going to enjoy music again? What would life be without music? What would life be without the sunset, right? If you had to just trade every aesthetically pleasing natural experience in your life for another dollar bill, it's going to be a pretty boring gray life that you live. So I do have a particular portion of my funds. It's like disproportionately large compared to most people in crypto, simply to support artists, because it's a huge part of my life, dude. Like, one of my degrees is in philosophy. When I triple majored in my bachelor's, I did econ, media studies, and philosophy. But I used to say it differently. I used to say I majored in philosophy, media studies, and econ. And people would say, oh, what kind of, before I could even get to media studies, people would say, what job are you going to get with a philosophy major? And the joke I would always say is, I'll be your fucking boss, dog. Because in philosophy, we have these conversations that really speak to the human experience, that uncover thought patterns, communication patterns, esoteric and ethereal discourse that isn't prevalent in the consumer-based marketplace. And if you are able to broaden the human language, not necessarily the different literal languages, English, Spanish, Japanese, etc., but if you can broaden your human communication skills to reach the hearts of more individuals, you will stoke the fires of your soul, and you will create a more fulfilling human experience for yourself. And so that's why I have friends of all different nationalities and ethnicities, and we don't look at ourselves as those things, but we bring these different flavors to the table. And that's like a very surface level way of saying that. We bring these different flavors to the table that make our lives infinitely more enjoyable for one another. And so if you have people out there that are grinding, who are struggling to be recognized, because we live, especially in the West, we live in a capitalistic consumerism society, and a lot of people value the cheeseburger over the scientist that was able to craft the formula, or we value the movie, but we don't watch the credits. I pay to make sure that the people in the credits eat. That's where I put my economic energy, because I want to see the sequel, or I want to see what they can do next. I understand that I'm growing. Artists are also growing. So I do what I can to make sure that the money isn't the barrier for them. As long as they're committed to their passion, no different than in finance. If someone puts out a very sophisticated and worthwhile value proposition for me to invest money in for the ROI, that's who wins the dollar. I don't just throw it into every project that pops up. No, you have to earn that dollar. Artists, on the other hand, I'm willing to give them a little bit more runway, because it is a much more disparaged faction of the community of society, where how hard it is to make a living as an artist? It's like impossible. It's like impossible. And most of the artists are like fed to you through corporate centralized marketing strategies like Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is literally just a VC venture that's like, hey, let's pour a ton of marketing money into this. Let's hire an artist and not even really pay her equitably for the work that she does. And then let's sell it to all these people by like trickling some of the NFTs into the celebrities' hands. And we'll use this kind of like viral marketing strategy. And all the while, it's like, of the millions and millions of dollars that have been exchanged because of that project, how many worthwhile, truly creative artists, including the girl who didn't even really get a fair shake compared to the economic energy that went into that project, how many of them are going to be gone tomorrow because they didn't have the support that they need? So there is more to life than just money, but some people who are producing that more to life flavor, they still need the money, right? We still got to eat, we still got to live. So that's kind of like my show on supporting creatives.
It's a very unique perspective, as I'm sure you're aware of, because there's not really, I do something similar, but for, goods and services, where I would much prefer to support you if I need a good or a service than go to a much more corporate level of things, even if it costs more money, because I'd fucking rather support you as an individual than give that to a corporation, on that sense, but not necessarily on the more abstract.
And in crypto, this is the world that we can create. We can decentralize the world where we say, oh, it might be more expensive, but that's just because we're using like relative comparison of how much something costs. But if you were able to get more people empowered to provide the goods and services of the world, that would inherently increase competition, which inherently decreases prices. And now you've created the same cost savings, but by distributing the wealth and the economic power among many, many, many regular folks, as opposed to 6 mega conglomerates that can essentially price fix you in and out of the market at a whim. That's sort of what we get with crypto, the true essence of crypto. Not it's a hedge against inflation, it's a store of value. No, it is censorship resistant, transparent ledger distributed in such a way that each participant benefits for each participant involved. So that is what it's about. All of those other narratives are very short term and myopic viewpoints that we've lost the plot here for a while because there's so many more people looking for, maybe they don't even know what they're looking for, but they're really getting into understanding that like the world isn't working for them. It's not going to bat for them the way that they're expected to go to bat every day. And so crypto becomes sort of the safe haven, but most new adopters in 2022 are looking at it as like, okay, this is better than stocks. But why is it better than stocks? It's all those qualities I just listed. It's not because it's the memes of like, oh, we're hedging against inflation. No, you're not. You're just giving yourself power because inherent to the system is the censorship resistance that allows you to have a chance at a future where you are not beholden to a very small fascist group of policymakers that are profiteering robber barons that lobby against your best interests in order to maintain their power. So this is like the ethos of crypto, and a lot of that is artistic. Like most people don't know this, but in the 70s, cryptographic language, coding language, almost became a terrorist outlaw act. Like you weren't allowed to produce cryptographic language. And then enough people said, no, it's freedom of speech. It's an artistic expression. We're allowed to do this under the First Amendment. And so people started getting tattoos of cryptographic computer code. And then they would go to the airport and say, oh, can I not get on this plane? Because if I send cryptographic information across borders, now I'm a informational terrorist. Like, what's the limit here? How far do we let censorship go? And because enough people took those stances, the government recognized where it was wrong and pivoted to protecting cryptographic codifying language under the First Amendment. And so most people look at it as like, oh, that's written speech. And I would argue it's artistic expression. And maybe they're the same thing, but it's really an art form to be able to produce this transformative written word into something that has inherent utility based on the way that it was designed. So it's kind of both, right?
How do you, I mean, like, so I see artists, right? And they can produce, really cool shit. On the one hand, that's exactly like what is their thing to do. But on the other hand, you're like, these people struggle because they, from my point of view, miss out on like being able to utilize that cool thing that they do to generate a living, even though there's a bazillion different ways to fucking do that. It's just they choose not to put any energy into capturing any of that, or like,
sure.
You know what I mean?
I'm not a charity. I don't just like, I do give to charities, but like, I don't just look for ways to set money on fire. Some people don't want to help themselves, right? And I can't help anybody that doesn't want to help themselves. So you have to draw the line somewhere.
That's it. That phrase, it seems with a tremendous amount of people in quote art, what you just said, there's fucking a bazillion different paths to help yourself. Mm-hmm. You just don't want to help yourself is how it comes across in my mind. But please,
yeah. And like that is kind of the angle that I come from, but I'm also not like an artist. So that's where I think that different folks who have different backgrounds in that style of life, they probably have more charitable runway. Like Omak I was in a space with Omak, and a woman came in, I believe she was from India, and she had produced an NFT collection that got censored in her home country. Or actually, it was just a physical art gallery collection, and it got censored in her home country. Omok said, because he's super into DeFi, right? He goes, I'm going to mint an NFT contract for you, show you how to turn your art into NFTs. I will pay for the gas fees to have it put on chain, and I'll buy a couple pieces of the artwork. So like, I might not even have the skills to be able to fulfill that kind of promise, but someone who has grown up in a family of artists, father and mother were both prominent artists, grew up in a culture of sophisticated art communities. He's very sensitive to these things. He understands that it can be a kill shot for an artist to be censored, because what little hope you had is now squelched by people that are just simply uninterested, but they have enough social influence perhaps to restrict your ability to express yourself freely. And so that's why America still is like the shining hill, or the shining light on the hill, because we have the First Amendment. And although you can look at a lot of things and critique a lot of issues with us, censorship resistance is embodied primarily by one nation. Everyone knows that America has the freedom of speech, and they're not the only ones that have it, but we're the ones that have it right above you can own guns. So being able to fight against tyranny comes second to being able to say what you want and critique who you want freely without the fear of being thrown into a prison. And my godfather comes from Chile. His father was black bagged by Augusto Pinochet's squadrons that drove around in Blue Falcons, and they actually escaped to America. His father was a university professor and was sort of like on the liberal side of social discourse, not left-wing communism, but just like, you should probably have freedoms, basic human freedoms. And that became very uncouth in the eyes of Pinochet's regime. He was one of the few people who was black bagged and lived to tell about it. He comes home one day and tells the family we're leaving. And they moved to America, and they actually lived homeless for a while on the beaches of Louisiana. My father grew up on a very low income family in Converse, Louisiana, and they became friends. And throughout their childhood, I have now learned that like the world isn't always free, and the world doesn't always do nice things, and there are real consequences to censorship. And these totalitarian regimes, these authoritarian regimes, the first thing that they do in order to achieve totalitarian draconian law is to censor you. So if you see these technocracies, technocrats coming out and saying, that's factually inaccurate. Well, that's not the point if it's factually inaccurate or not. It's my right to have an opinion. You don't get to tell me that my opinion is invalid simply because you disagree with the substance of it. Now, is it better for society if we have accurate opinions that are based in reality? Sure. But what is a fictional book if not a clear and obvious break from reality? So do we have to just throw away every work of fiction that's ever been authored and put in the library simply because if you fact check it, oh, it turns out that whales don't speak English?
Well, what happens when, so I spend a lot of time by myself, which I enjoy, right? But I also spend time talking to you gentlemen, and I was like, but there's like a way to almost self-regulate through free speech, where if you're more the crackpot type of person that goes down these different rabbit holes, and there's no sounding board for some of the, maybe I'm going to use the word idiotic fucking craziness that goes on between, the two ears. That sounding board is almost, even if you're around those type of people, some of the shit is even more off of left field than the people who you're around, and those people are already at the edge of society to start with. It's almost a sounding board to bring people back into reality, to say that you're fucking crazy whack job, bro. Like, you know what I mean? And in a sense, it's like a self-regulating thing, because if you're saying wacky shit, I'm probably going to say something to you or just not talk to you again, kind of thing.
Yeah, I like to say you have the right to be wrong. Like, I don't have to agree with what you say. You have the right to express your incorrect opinions. And I will never abridge that freedom of yours. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to just subject myself to it. I don't have to just listen to crazy people say crazy shit all day. I might just disengage, and you don't have the right to abridge my freedom to get the hell away from you. So as long as we understand that we are autonomous individuals with our sovereign freedoms, and I'm not going to abridge yours and you're not going to abridge mine, you can be as crazy as you want. Here's some examples of the image generation for Pokegan. I believe that it's technically like upside down. So again, it's like OMAC is all about making you work for it, right? So like the images that you're seeing look like kind of nothing, but if you actually flip them upside down, then you start to see like, oh, these kind of look like Pokemon that I'm familiar with. But as you can, if you were familiar,
they definitely, if you are familiar with Pokemon, these definitely
right. If I, yeah, Jimrad, if I showed you like 2 seconds of the screen and I was like, oh, did you see those Pokemon? You'd be like, yeah, I don't know.
100%. Because anyone that got into the more nuanced games, like I'm not going to lie to anyone here, I spent over 1,000 USD on Pokemon Go.
Nice.
And I played for real. Like I didn't even cheat. I was sober at the time, so I was killing time. But but yeah, I know very well the power of said images like this, because they ring those Pokemon bells, because anyone who knows Pokemon very intimately knows there's so many Pokemon that you probably don't know the last like 50% or 60%. So you know what they kind of look like in general, and they're kind of playing off that. They're kind of playing off that, like we all know what they kind of look like in general, but they don't have to look first gen.
Exactly. You know? And that kind of brings up the discourse of like, what is a trademark art? You know, this isn't made by a human. All of these images that we're looking at are entirely made by artificial intelligence. And the way that they did that was by being fed seed data in the form of images of the original Pokemon. Crazy. So it's like, who's going to sue? Like, how do you sue this? Like, the robots made it, dog.
I'd love to hear Sam's take. I want to hear Sam's take on this. So, Sam, we know about like, just like Colt Dow, you know how they say they can't be sued for securities laws because there's no one that's technically there that's a human. It's like a similar concept, right? So then we have to dive in a little further, but it's so true. It's like these are computer generated images based on hundreds and hundreds of other images that are morphed together. Where does this stand? What is intellectual integrity nowadays? What can happen with all this? Nintendo, Sam, they're going to come after them.
Oh no,
so, dude. If Nintendo sues Not Nintendo Labs, that floor price goes to infinity.
Yeah, and that's their counterplay. It's like they know that.
And if anyone doesn't know that they sue more than Disney.
Yeah.
Like they'll sue a little kid. Like literally.
The idea too, like for the legal standpoint of it, is these generative art, like it's also recontextualized. So we're not just taking the exact game of Pokemon and saying, hey, we've created a Monster Explorer world. It is totally recontextualized into a Web3 educational platform with the philosophical discourse of what is intellectual property, what are you buying when you buy an NFT, all of these things, all of these concepts. So it's, if someone were to come to you and say like, oh, they're going to sue you, there's no case there. The appropriation art has been around for thousands of years, and it's very well understood that you can actually take the exact artwork that somebody has, the exact visual, I should say, because art is also the context, subtext, and all of the conversation surrounding that work. So the visual is, you can keep the visual 100% the same and just recontextualize the conversation, and that is justified as appropriation art.
There's a doctrine in the United States, fair use, right? So you can use, and a lot of times it's for like the news or like people on YouTube talking about shit, right? Where you can take other people's shit, and I could use the fuck out of it however I wanted to use it legally. Nobody can do anything about that because of this doctrine of fair use. You can
especially with education,
and you can use other people's copyrighted material, changing the context of what it's around. Also in the NFT space, I have a buddy who got into stuff, maybe 2 years ago, and NFTs, and he would just take photos that were very iconic in sports, and you can just manipulate them very marginally, and you turn around and fucking sell that shit, and somebody's interested in buying it because it is now a new piece of art. Recontextualizes the word you were using of the original version, and that's effectively the same thing you're doing here, but it's just done with AI and ML. This, if a lawsuit does come, maybe a better way of putting that is when a lawsuit does come, it's just going to be awesome marketing.
Yeah,
it's going to be fantastic.
That's the thing is like I would actually, I'm like 60-40 majority saying that they wouldn't sue, because it's just, as much as they are the most like trigger happy lawsuit oriented company, like this is probably one battle that they are quickly going to recognize as like, it's like you're really going to fall for the bait, not Nintendo. And then if you look into it for more than 30 seconds and you have that background of legalese and artistic expression, it's like, oh, okay. They're clearly aware of what they're doing here. Like, do we want to give them 1 billion audience members that they didn't have yesterday? And do we want to position ourselves as like the evil corporation that used to be your childhood friend, and now there's this like much smaller, much more scarce resource that everyone can FOMO into and take their business away from us, maybe even damn our brand? So like, I'm actually kind of in the camp that they probably won't see.
But that is an interesting, now that we brought it up, that it is a very interesting like marketing strategy, so to speak, right? Like if you have the resources, right, to protect yourself from a legal standpoint, if there were to come along, but to be able to use things that are, I want to say gray area, but it's not even gray area. Like anybody who actually has an understanding, like knows about it, and use that as a marketing strategy, because then when lawsuits do come, you can use that to engage even more marketing, and just use other people's like resources and the cachet, or we've been talking about nostalgia, right? The nostalgia is in the marketplace. It's real. Like GRC was mentioning it with shit that like somebody gave them, and you have feelings for that mentally around that kind of shit, right? The nostalgia associated with the brand that sues them can be leveraged into increased market exposure and attention through the lawsuit. I don't know. That's a very interesting way of doing marketing that I don't think a lot of people
What do we know about marketing?
Articles.
We need articles written about us. Articles all over the internet. What happens when people sue people? BitBoy sues people just for the articles. I guarantee.
Look at so Omak has gained roughly 18,000 followers in like we both started our last Twitter handle at roughly the same time. I'm at like 10K, he's at like 18K. Well deserved. He also hosts a ton of spaces about the hot thing. Like he's very in touch with what's going on in crypto. So Bored Ape Yacht Club, Yuga Labs versus Ryder Rip's Bored Ape Yacht Club. That is really like the conversation that we're having about what do you own when you buy an NFT. And when you look at the ability to like go out and talk about controversial subjects that are directly impacting people's finances, right? People paid a lot of money for these JPEGs, thinking that they were buying the art. And even Yuga Labs sort of insinuated that you are owning the intellectual property. But we have precedent that what you're really buying is the smart contract, the token, and the token can have URI that points to IPFS, which is a public domain, where they are simply displaying an image. And anybody could write a smart contract that points to that image. And the analogy that I give to people that really struggle with this, and this is why we're having these spaces and why Omak has been hosting a ton of controversial discussions for people to share their opposing viewpoints. Has anybody sued Bill Gates for producing an operating system that allows a computer to access Google and view copyrighted images? We're all pretty aware that we don't own that image that we're looking at, right? If someone says, this is my copyrighted photograph, and I just look it up on their Instagram, nobody's convinced that I'm like stealing their art to view that picture, right? So that is the reality behind hyperlink to a public domain registry of images, that if the proper computer software detects that hyperlink, it can display the image. I'm not buying the image. And in fact, if you have the ability to change the metadata, then you're able to go and change the image. So like, I didn't steal the image. I can't. It's not intrinsic to the token itself. And that is where a lot of these discussions are becoming like really prominent. He's got people, thousands, sometimes like 1,000 people in a Twitter space talking about this stuff, because that's how Web3 illiterate we are. People are overpaying for, and this is where Richard Hart is correct, serial numbers that are loosely related to JPEGs that may or may not be hosted on the blockchain. What he's really saying is you are buying a smart contract, which is a bundle of code with the capability to point to a public domain where a JPEG may be on the other side of that hyperlink, and that JPEG may or may not, and probably not, be on the blockchain. And the reason it's probably not is because JPEGs are relatively large file sizes compared to what the distributed ledger is designed for. So people don't mint the image onto the blockchain and pay $1,000 in gas fees. They put it on IPFS and just allow you to look at it through a hyperlink that says, yeah, there's an image over there. Can you just pull that image up on my screen?
Is this not Nintendo on blockchain? Or how is this different than that structure?
The NFT contracts are on-chain. The metadata is centralized. So the metadata that points to the images is hosted not on the blockchain, but it is hosted by a private company that owns the technology and the proprietary distribution of the metadata. So it is protected. The intellectual property of the NFT is what you own, but because you don't own the physical freedom to change the metadata of that NFT, right? Those permissions are like admins, if you will. Then you don't own the artwork. So it's kind of blurring the line there. And that's where this is part of why the project exists. This is part of the context of the art is, what are you buying? Well, you're buying a smart contract that generates a unique file that does point to physically hosted visual art. Now, whether or not the smart contract gives you the intellectual property or not is up to the creator of the smart contract. So in this case, to the best of my knowledge, because of the ownership of the centralization of the metadata, you don't own the intellectual property of the image. But here's the beautiful thing. You're working with cypherpunks. These are the #1 people who want you to right-click save the picture. Right-click save it, put it as your profile picture. Who cares? It's the internet. They wanted the internet to be free flow of information. So like, they aren't going to chase you down. Now, if you go around, if I were to go around and say like, hey, I'm the CEO of Not Nintendo Labs and I created Pokegan, like, yeah, I could probably get sued, right? And I probably should be, because I didn't create any of this stuff. And I'm just really passionate about the art. So that is part of the educational content that will be discussed in game. Like, what is an NFT? Because a lot of people are confused right now and they're getting very emotionally butthurt about, oh, you're calling me racist because I have simianization apes that may or may not have artistic traits that are racist dog whistles that call back to Nazism. And it's like, no, I didn't call you racist. I said that some of the artwork has racist undertones and dog whistles. Doesn't mean that if you own it that you're a racist. Some people buy Nazi memorabilia simply as like a FU to the movement so that it'll never be destroyed, because they don't want to destroy history and they want everyone to be able to remember the atrocities that were put against other humans. So like, a lot of these people are going, if he would have just changed if he would have changed the art, talking about writer rips, if he would have changed the art, but what they really mean is if he would have changed the visual that I'm looking at. The art is the entire discussion. It's the context, the subtext, it's the philosophy behind all of this, the conversations that are taking place peripheral to the visual. A lot of people are conflating what art is because they just don't have a like educational background in it. They haven't taken philosophy. They haven't studied art. They haven't had people in their social circles that understand the layers of depth that go into art. So they're saying, you can't copy my JPEG. You are infringing on my trademark. But none of these images are trademarked. They are publicly listed on IPFS. And right now, you could go and take the URI straight out of the smart contract for Bored Ape Yacht Club, plug it into IPFS URL finder, and you could display the image. So like, if you build the front end, did OpenSea steal the JPEGs? They're just displaying the image, man. They're not claiming actually that they don't own that image just because it's on the website. So that's that's where we still probably need some. I don't really need it, but some people feel that we need like regulation to come in and be like, well, what is protected? So I think that this stuff has precedent for thousands of years. I think that appropriation art is valid. I think that having the freedom to express yourself is far more important to me than if the value is the visual, good luck, because we can all just copy visuals. and counterfeit artists can sell just as successfully as original artists. But if I walked up to you and I said, I support you as an artist, and I put $100 bill in your hand, that's provenance. I'm supporting you. The visual is just a peripheral aspect of the conversation, and maybe it moves me emotionally and it has some kind of value in my life. But you as the creator are the value to that art. You are what justifies the price. So when they say, oh, somebody stole my JPEGs, it's like, no, they didn't. They're publicly hosted on the internet. And the NFTs that Ryder Rips wrote, the contract that he minted, is a totally unique NFT because, believe it or not, non-fungible tokens can't be funged. So yeah, it's not it's not the same code. It's a totally different smart contract. It just happens to point to the same URI that hosts an image on IPFS.
The idea behind what you're talking about, it comes across as very like what we all believe in, meritocracy, right? Getting
Exactly.
paid, but like, and is relating to art in this conversation, right? Where is super subjective, but the idea of meritocracy, I think, in the broader conversation around that, and the, because the art piece is going to change as time goes on, and there's going to be other shit that comes on the board that is, maybe a little bit more stimulating to talk about for some people in some regards, right? Because they're like using NFTs as a form of changing the world that we live in, right? In the physical world that we live in. And that stuff is going to be very interesting, especially when you layer on top of that meritocracy of getting value for you being you, and as good as you are 100%. Or as bad as you are, like
100%. Yeah, we're just looking for accountability and transparency, right? And so to just like manufacture this narrative, and I was getting some pushback by some people because it's like, it's a trigger for some people, dude. If I told you that like that JPEG is not what the NFT is, and that the NFT is a smart contract, some people's argument is, most people think that they're buying the JPEG. Well,
That's
guess what?
accurate.
Most people used to think the earth is flat. So using most people as what is reality is probably not going to get you very far. And we also have thousands of years of precedent that specifically says, we don't care what most people think. This is the philosophical, logically sound argument as to why the ends justify. So
we might be seeing the end of these companies too. Like, because of the new technology, they can't play the system anymore. They're too far behind. And I mean, maybe not, but like, you know what I mean? Maybe they could have a resurgence like they do, like Pokemon Go. After years and years and years, they decided to make a play on the iPhone app, and it worked out, I think. I'm not exactly sure the numbers on that, but I mean, I know people were about that shit for a while. And it's all interesting. The functionality of NFTs, the legality of NFTs, the understanding, because people just don't understand. And that's the first part. People really don't understand when you were breaking it down from the visual. What's the visual part? Okay. What's the context part? Okay. What's the artistic value part? And then there's business propositions. People like to support smaller businesses. People advertise better than others. I always tell people, if your channel sucks, you're not clicking enough. You know what I mean? Like if your channel sucks, it's because, well, if it's not growing, it's because you're not clicking enough. I'm out clicking you if I'm outgrowing you. Yep. Because it's just like a click thing. You have to sit behind the thing. You got to DM people. You got to talk to people. You got to join Twitter Spaces. You got to get your fingers behind the keys. People that are so smart, so smart. They stream and they have dude, I was watching some streamers for these guys 5 years ago. They had like 10 live viewers during the stream, and they had like 14 yesterday. And that was like 5 years ago. And I'm swear to God, they're acting like the shit's popping off.
All right.
And yeah, their business model is different, but still, Jesus Lord, like, come on, like, send the word out a little bit. Send the message, and they're talking about the same shit, and the value's pretty good. The value's there, but there's no marketing. And so, guys, if you're out there and you have a message to spread, just know it spreads because you spread it.
Yeah.
It spreads because, like, the Crypto in the Morning is cool because I clicked a fucking lot of links to get people in here so it could get popping. I wanted it to get popping.
And that's, I would suggest for anybody that's like really struggling with like hearing me pitch some of the stuff, like go follow the guy on Twitter. He's been hosting Twitter Spaces basically every day for like a couple months now. I'm not going to go out of my way to drag you to every place that he's at because I personally find a lot of valuable information. I convey a lot of it back to the communities that I have networked with. I'm not interested in bothering people. I know how to shut up and listen. So I go to his spaces to shut up and listen. And every now and then I go up on stage and I chat with him about things that are prevalent in my life. If you are struggling to understand like where the value is, I would argue that if you dedicated 1 hour of your time, and this is a random shot because he's a cypherpunk, he's like me, dude. He's a troll at heart, like loves to just have a good time, loves to be crazy. But if you catch the times where he is really laying it down and putting what everyone calls like the alpha or whatever, you'll see what I'm talking
Yeah, and I tell people the same thing. I'm a watch and listen kind of guy. I pick who I talk to. Nobody picks who talks. Like, you know what I mean? Like I like to pick the people that I want to get information for. And to be honest, the other people that hit me up, I don't even fucking talk to them. And it's not because I don't know them. I don't really want to know them.
To give you an idea of how valuable the information is, I have slowly begun to slip the handle out the last couple of weeks so that Hexicans can become aware of it. Every time I go into one of his Twitter spaces now, I can see about 20 people from our community who are in there. As soon as the space opens, they're the first ones in. And so it's next level stuff. I mean, the connections, the professional background that these people have, like the Illuminati work for him. Like that, like that's the
even
level
like
of
more
like
than that
luxury
to me. It's
talking.
the way they talk. It's coming from a place of abundance. It's coming
Yeah.
from, and that's what, when I'm talking, fuck what they have, fuck who their friends are. I know poor ass motherfuckers that get their point across really well because they come from a place of abundance and value. Everyone's in a different spot in their life. You know what I mean? But those guys talk, and it's not about what happens when some people jump into the Twitter spaces and they start shilling their shit. Like anyone with any social IQ would wait like an hour and a half, listen up, ask 3 questions before you do, and then say, hey guys, I have this thing. If you'll let me talk about it for 1 second, and they might tell you to shut the fuck up, but that's how you socially interact with others.
Exactly. You got to be respectful to other people, right? Like respect is earned. Like you can't just show up and say, hey, have you heard about this new thing that I've already invested in? So there's no way I'm biased and you should definitely give me a space. Like, I love it. He calls himself Kim Jong-il in his Twitter spaces. Like, you have the freedom of speech everywhere else, but not in my space. So it is a privilege to be on the stage, and you can talk. If I give you the microphone to talk, I don't need to have you come up here and talk about dumb shit. So like, there are a lot of people in here that are interested in what I have to say, and I'm willing to give everybody a chance to participate and contribute. But that doesn't mean that like it's equal opportunity up here. You know, that the only equal opportunity is that everyone has the same chance of being kicked off the stage as everyone else. So don't get it twisted. Like, this isn't your personal show fest. Nobody's here for that. Nobody cares, dude. Like,
well, open your mind. You got to open your mind. You got
most of us have so many bags of so many different crypto projects that like for you to come in and say like that you found the one is just like, oh my God, here we go again, dog.
Exactly.
Like,
and I'm learning it from the reverse end because I started with Hex and Bitcoin, and now I'm
right.
And
that's a good way to start. But look at how far you've come, dude. And like you've had, but you also have, you started in a good place where you found a couple quality things to really focus your energy on. And then rather than just say, this is how everything works, you've still stayed diligent and said, hey, you know, I'll listen to it, but that doesn't mean that I'm buying a bag. And even if I buy a bag, that doesn't mean that I'm beholden to believe this forever. Like if you don't put up what you're kind of claiming that you're going to put up, I can pivot. You know, I don't owe Bitcoin anything. I don't owe Bitcoin anything.
Mr. Amakasi doesn't owe us anything. Like this could be their side project that they like to fuck around with. And if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not up in this dude's bedroom when he's talking to his girl. Like, I don't know what the fuck this guy's doing, but I know where his feet are. He's always in Twitter spaces. He's always all over the place. He talks about things that no one else talks about because he's interested in it. Just like me and Sam could talk about stupid peptides for 4 hours straight. And we would just be sitting there like, dude, this is insane. And most people would be like, these guys are fucking idiots.
Yeah, it's
and
not
they would literally say it. But they would literally say
that
because it's just, they're just not, it's just like, why not? Fuck off. It's just how people
dude.
are.
People have said that like he's an idiot, that he's racist. The dude tested off the IQ chart as a child, and the FBI had to restructure the IQ test for him. Like, these are documented facts. So
put your notifications on, guys. Anyway, we've been on here for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm going to, Orcus might be in some spaces. Omakasi might be in some spaces. Check him out. See what's going on.
I think he has one going right now. And if he does, like, I'm going to go listen, and I'll be minting the Pokegan all day again.
If you have a good question for open his DMs, and if you really want to get his attention, just tag him in a tweet. If he doesn't follow you, he'll follow you. So just tag him in a tweet or something, or get him on Telegram. But he will. There's only 2 days left, so I'm sure he's kind of like, it'll be over anyway in a couple days.
I'll grind it out.
So this is fun, guys. Motley's excited. I like when Motley's excited. I like when guys are excited, having a good time. Why can't we have a good time?
And just one last little Easter egg for you guys. The ticker for Pokegon is Cope. So Poke in the Pokemon world is kind of the prefix that they use for all of their, you throw Pokeballs, you have, the Pokemon, Poke Centers, Pokemart. Cope is the ticker for Pokegon, which is an anagram for Poke, and it elucidates the concept of coping mechanism, which is like bear market memes, as you go like, oh, cope harder, bro. Like you're down bad. Why don't you just cope about it? So like they have just little like intricacies like that. This is not some slap job project that's like promising you the world. It's very much built out, legitimate, and they have tons of reputation that you can go, the provenance, if you will. Like this is not their first rodeo.
This will be super interesting to watch. If you guys have any interest, reach out to Orca on Twitter. We've shared the link. You just scroll up, or somebody else can share it right now. If you want to follow along with what GRC and myself are doing, there's links down below to Instagram and Twitter, my YouTube channel. If you're watching on GRC channel is linked down below. If you're watching on my channel, also on TikTok. I don't know if we have those down below, but you can find us on TikTok as well. And we have a awesome song here from DeFi
Wait, one second before you press the song, guys. I'm going on with KG to talk about the internet money features on the wallet. I'm learning about features on wallets because MetaMask is poopy, and I don't like it that much. And
I need a new wallet besides MetaMask, dude. I'm excited to see that one.
I'm learning about any and all wallets, guys. And just because RH says the devs are working on a wallet doesn't mean it won't come out in 2 years. 2 years is a lot of time, guys.
Oh my God.
So I'm not even hating. I mean, the dude's just
2030 wallet drop. Yeah.
So guys, again, I want features on wallets. I want to learn. Internet Money. KG came on here. Dude practically poured his soul out last time he was on here. He's like, and it was incredible. And he was like, I won't act like I did last time. I was like, dude, you better act like
out, dog. This is what we're here about, man. Like I can tell people who are passionate in Web3 and they're the ones I give my attention and energy to. Right?
So I tweeted that below, guys. So go ahead and give that a retweet. KG, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, guys. It's going to be a banger. What an amazing episode, Crypto Orca. Thank you so much for minting and getting back to me on all 3 colors I got. GRC has got all 3 colors, one of each. Motley has 11,000 of each. And we're all going to do 60 plus hours of education.
Oh, so the last little bit about like that education, the cool thing when you get those badges, that is essentially like the first ever on-chain resume builder. Like that's going to be proof in your wallet if you minted that through the competencies in the game that it's like, hey man, I actually know how to do these things. There's
we're taking out the education system as well.
Right. Yeah, dude, how many people have a Twitter handle that's like, I'm a Web3 consultant? And it's like, you couldn't code yourself out of a shoebox, dog. Like, who are you to tell me what Web3 is? You haven't even read the Nakamoto white paper. I saw a dude with almost 1 million followers saying that Bitcoin doesn't inflate. What? Bro, you better have the Goblin badge next time I see you, or I'm not listening to anything you say. Like,
guys,
you're not worthy.
All those badges, and I'm going to learn my way to the top, guys. We're taking over the education system. GRC, Orca, Sam Stolt, every single day, 11 a.m., guys. See you soon.
Peace.
Young folks, you dripping on them motherfucker.
Richard Heart. Richard Heart.
Bought my hex from the fucking start. Point one every day we mark. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hit restart. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hit restart. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Checking my MetaMask moving. Look at the hex, he is mooning. Looking at wives they be choosing. Peter is why they be losing. Pro chains out and get me a check. He's gas up and it got me a mess. Remember the times he died collect. Hex had me eating, I'm dying in the best. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post ain't lingo. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post ain't lingo. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Buy my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hurt. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Buy my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hurt. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Richard Hurt. Richard Hurt.